the Tuscaloosa News. Cecil Hurt, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Hey, Ryan, how are you today?
Good. You, according to the producer, you've got your own theme music here. This is pretty good.
Hey, Johnny Cash, I'll take that every day of the week.
No doubt. Cecil, what's the last 24 hours been like? Pretty crazy?
Yeah, it's been hectic. Not entirely unexpected, I suppose, but you'd like a little break. You've got 9 days. You'd at least like a Monday where it wasn't quite so volatile. But that's it's understandable. Nick Saban felt like he had to make a decision, and probably one of the few coaches that would have the gumption to make that kind of decision at this point, rather than just sort of muddle through and hope things got better in the next 8 days.
Are you buying the mutual word?
I think it would be fair to say I'm hesitant to say, Lane's not telling the truth. Different people have different versions of what
sure
really happened, and yet they can both be honest. I think Lane felt like he didn't get it 100%, didn't do a good enough job on Saturday, and probably agreed with Coach Saban on that. So, and what are you going to do at that point? You're not going to, beg and grovel and say you're going to stay. You're going to agree with Coach Saban. Now, I know Coach Saban's opinion is mutual. He tells you what he thinks. Waits until you agree with him, and then it's mutual. That's how that works. So, I'm sure that's what happened in this case too.
So I'd like to go back to Saturday night just for a couple of minutes. What was your evaluation of that game plan, that performance on Saturday night?
I think in one way, if I had to say something positive about the game plan, it also required a little bit of luck, but it did keep Alabama from turning the ball over. I thought there were at least 2 plays. There was a throw by Jalen early that probably should have been, not just could have been, but should have been intercepted. And then he put the ball on the turf and was just fortunate that one of his offensive linemen got down on it. But generally speaking, they didn't do anything that was going to risk turning the ball over and giving Washington a short field. I think they felt, even after that first touchdown drive, I think they felt like Washington wasn't going to drive repeatedly on them and put up 24, 28 points that way if they didn't turn the ball over. I think if you had, first of all, I expected Alabama to win anyway, as you did, and most people did, but if you had said Alabama would be +2 in turnovers, you would have guaranteed that Alabama would win that game. So I think that was part of it. With that said, and in fairness to Lane, he's had some great games, done some great play calling, and it just wasn't crisp, just wasn't up to his usual standard at Alabama. I think that there seemed to be, whether it was communication or lack of communication, probably a better way to phrase it, there seemed to be times when Jalen wasn't comfortable. There seemed to be times when the offensive line wasn't comfortable with the line calls meshing with what the play call was. So there was some dysfunction. They were fortunate, and it's the luxury of talent, as I've said, that the default was turn around and hand it to Bo, and he certainly made the most of that. But, and I thought Washington was good defensively. They weren't the biggest, most physical LSU. Bo knocked some people around against LSU, too. He can go against anybody. But I don't know that he would have gone for 180 yards against any defense, but he certainly did Saturday, and that was a great fallback to have.
How big is this move when you look at it of changing coordinators 8 days prior to the national championship game?
Philosophically, I don't know that it's a big move at all. They'll do what they want to do. They've broken down Clemson film. Sark knows the personnel. It's not like they're bringing in a quote-unquote new offensive coordinator. It's somebody who's been on the staff all year and is familiar. I would say where it's important, and I can't predict how this will go, but I think quarterbacks, people who play quarterback, will tell you that for some quarterbacks it's important to have that one voice and to be comfortable with that one voice, because you've got a million things to going on around you, a million things to sort out. But I know in Jalen's case, when he would hear Lane or see Lane on the sidelines, that's when he knew what to do. That's I think Lane did a good job of directing him, which play, which direction, which receiver, and so forth. Will he immediately have that rapport with Steve Sarkisian? We don't know. Jalen certainly is a low-key individual. I don't think that he's one that'll get all nervous, and I think he's been pretty unflappable this season, and he may have the same comfort level. It's not like he's spent his entire life with Lane. He's spent his entire Alabama career, a little less than a year at this point. But it's not like he can't adjust, and probably knew he was going to have to adjust to somebody new next year anyway. But it's just whether they can get all that worked out in 8 days is the question.
Let me ask you, as far as an advantage, maybe this could be an advantage for Alabama when you look at preparations from Clemson, because even though Dabo said they're going to stick to pretty much the same thing earlier this morning on a teleconference, we don't really know that for certain. And then we see Nick Saban sort of saying, hey, Dabo's my real good friend. I think I'll just call him up and tell him what we're going to do. This can be a little difficult for them in preparation phase.
Yeah, Alabama will be Alabama. They're not going to come out in the spread or the wishbone or anything. But as a play caller, even though they've worked together, even though they're close, Steve's going to have different tendencies than Lane has. And now Lane was very good at breaking tendencies, at not being predictable. But Steve's an entirely different. You have no. I guess you could go back to Southern Cal film, but with this personnel, you really have no way to scout what his tendencies will be, what he'll like to do on 3rd and 2, what he'll like to do on 2nd and 11. With Lane, you had a 3-year database of at least some of that, and Lane certainly kept it unpredictable, didn't get caught in a box necessarily, but you do have no way to know what Steve's tendencies are going to be.
When you look at this Alabama team, and if I remember correctly, so I try to store this, you're like Nick Saban. You don't like doing comparables. Am I right?
Not too much, particularly over time.
Is this the best defense?
But I'll take a shot. I've been
here
a while.
Is this the best defense you've covered?
Okay, here's how I've answered. I get that asked a lot.
Okay.
There's no way. There's simply not a fair way to either team to compare, for instance, to the 1961 team. They gave up 13 points in a year. They were obviously, for 1961 college football, they were a great defense. Had Leroy Jordan, had great players. But you can't compare. Football has changed so much in 55 years. You can't say they're better or worse than the 61 team. It's just that I think you're beyond comparing. I think you can probably start a little bit with the 78 and 79 defenses, which were very good. Certainly, you can talk about the 92 defense, which I always think in some ways they didn't have. There's a great defense this year. That's one thing the 92 defense didn't have. They really had to keep it low scoring because the offense wasn't going to score a lot of points. So they were almost always under pressure. Any touchdown that they gave up, any field goal that they gave up, was going to make things difficult. They were putting some pressure on their offense, and very rarely did they give up anything. And like this defense, put a lot of players in the pros. Had George Teague, Antonio Langham, Curry Copeland, et cetera. Then I think we're still there's one game left, and let's see what happens in this game. The 2011 defense got to this championship game and pitched a shutout. And that's a great defense. You know how many guys are playing in the NFL. So to say right now, this is better than 2011. The 2011 defense played the second best team in college football, LSU. Played them 8 quarters and an overtime, and did not give up a touchdown. And you could say, well, LSU wasn't a great offensive team. Look at what LSU did to everybody else that year offensively. So that was a great defense. With that said, this defense is right there. We'll do the comparisons at the end of the year, but they did such a great job Saturday. Washington had one drive where some things were successful, and then after that drive, Alabama immediately took those things away. They immediately didn't let Washington do those things anymore, made Washington one-dimensional. Washington ended up crossing the 50-yard line 2 times in the game, and that's a good Washington offense.
See, so I go back to last year's Clemson game, or in 2016 there to get that year started. I learned last week that there was some players for Alabama that were disappointed really in their performance against that game. I'm hearing revenge a lot being used for Clemson going up against Alabama, but I think this defense, from what we learned last week, they were embarrassed by Deshaun Watson. I think there's some revenge for these guys too.
I think they want to play better. I think that's fair, whether that's revenge when you won the game, but all they heard about coming out of the game was Deshaun Watson, or the feeling that their offensive teammates carried the load. O.J. Howard, Kenyon Drake, Derrick Henry, et cetera, and who did play great. And it's all part of the team, and probably the balance in that game, if you look at it between Clemson's offense, Alabama's defense, Alabama's offense, Clemson defense, probably what tipped the balance in that game was Alabama's specialty. Was the onside kick, the kickoff return, and the things they were able to do on special teams. So, I think the defense they like to have the reputation of dominating people. They play with a mean attitude, as Coach Saban has said, and aren't very friendly. And I think they would like to cap that off and not let Deshaun Watson have a great game.
Is Alabama going to win this game?
I think so, but I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a great game. Like I said, I think it was a great game last year. I think it came down to some plays in special teams. To Alabama, I think they'll win, Ryan, but I don't think they can win 45-40 in that type game, which it was last year. So I just think that Alabama will be good enough to keep it lower scoring and do enough. Maybe it's with non-offensive touchdowns. Maybe it's with defensive touchdowns. But I think Alabama will do enough to win. They expect to win. They know how to win. I know Clemson does too. But I just think Alabama's come this far. I think they know what they'll do. I think that Jalen will play better than he played last Saturday, and they'll get by, maybe by 1, maybe by 3, maybe by 6.
The one thing that stands out to me, and I don't know if you pick up on this, I know you probably do, last year's team had great team chemistry. And I think they taught this team to also have great team chemistry, because this team, to me, is closer than last year's team, and I think they just picked up on what happened last year. But I just get this unique brotherhood within this team. This team is close as any team as I've covered.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's why Coach Saban talked so much about Eddie's letter to the team in his postgame in Atlanta. I think that's something that he notices and that he's aware of. Every team's different. There's a different chemistry. There's a different chemistry when you have a Heisman Trophy winner, and I think Derek was a team guy and a humble guy, but again, he's the Heisman Trophy winner. You're looking at him and saying that's the best player in college football. So when you don't have that, you have a little different dynamic. Jake was an older guy at quarterback. Jake's 22 years old. Jalen's 18. Big difference in that. So every team is unique, but I think you're right. I think this one, very popular guys, very good leadership. Jonathan Allen is a leader. Reuben Foster's a leader. I think that some of the guys on offense have developed to be leaders. So you've got to have an element of that. You can be more talented than the next guy, but you've also got to have some cohesion.